Hi, I'm Tracy.
Hi, and I'm Faye. And welcome to More Better with Tracy and Faye.
More better. More better. More better with Tracy and Faye.
Tracy and Faye in the same room. Yay! It's very exciting.
It's very exciting.
What are we talking about?
HR. Human resources, people and culture, the people's people. Is it the people's people?
Sometimes.
Whatever they're called these days, we know who they are and mostly what they do. They're one of the few areas in an organization that touches every single employee with really important things, such as they hire you, they pay you, super important, they support you, they teach you, they advise you. So today we're talking about all things HR, or the function that takes care of payroll, compensation, benefits, recruiting, onboarding, career development, organizational structure, training and development, all the things that impact you as an employee. And yet it seems like they're getting less and less communication support these days.
It's so baffling to me. Like, it really is.
Sad.
HR is so integral to every single employee at any organization, and yet they are getting probably less communication support than they used to, and they need a lot of communication support because what they do is so important. But, here we are.
Yeah, well, here we are. I agree. I've done a lot of HR comms in my career. The need is always far greater than the communication resources available. Mm-hmm. And that's why we turned our attention to this space and asked ourselves some questions. What can we do to make it easier for HR professionals to communicate with employees at their organizations? And what can we deliver on a podcast that can help improve HR communications?
Mm-hmm. So the first thing we did is we asked them.
What?
I know. We asked HR professionals what they need in terms of HR communication support. So we did it, through LinkedIn, and we got a ton of really amazing input. We had no idea what we were going to get. We didn't predict anything, but it was really pretty cool that came in. And I'm scrolling here. Sorry.
You're allowed. No, you're allowed. You're allowed.
Thank you. So some of the stuff that really stood out. I'm only going to talk about the things that really stood out. And that was two things. So we asked these HR pros, we said, what is the most valuable kind of support that you have had with working together with a comms pro? And 57% said strategy and advice. So helping HR people develop a communication plan and a strategy to deliver on whatever it is they need to deliver on, but it's that communication. It's the helping develop a communications plan and solutions.
Okay.
And the second most valuable, which was actually only at 33%, it was quite interesting, was writing and editing, making things better. But those were the two that stuck out. So strategy and advice around communication planning and writing and editing. And then we asked the question, if you had a dedicated communication support person, let me rephrase that. A dedicated communications pro supporting you, how would you use them?
Okay.
And 81% said communication planning and strategy. And that stood out by a lot. And then there was a three-way tie at 57% of strategic communication advice, writing and editing, and then also supporting change management. So based on the 80% of HR professionals who said they want support developing communications plans, that is what we're going to focus on today. But before we dive into that, we just wanted to point out, if you are an HR person and you are looking for that additional support around writing and editing and change management, we actually have that. In episode 1 and 2 of More Better with Tracy and Faye, we focus on business writing and editing. And in episode 4, we talk about principles of change management. So if you are an HR professional and you are looking for support in those areas, we do have some podcasts that can help you. But for today, we're just going to be focusing on communication planning.
I want to add one more.
Okay.
Because I think we did an episode on tech communications,
Oh yeah.
right? Technical
Yeah.
communications or communicating technical information to non-technical audiences.
Mhm.
And I think in that episode, we did focus on IT, right? Like mostly.
Yeah.
But HR content can be quite technical. So I'm going to throw that in there. I believe that is episode 5.
Was that 5? I don't remember because there's been so many.
So many.
We're almost at 10. So how do you expect us to
We're going to beat the odds, I tell you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think that's great. So I love communications planning and working with HR. And I think the other thing I'm going to add is, so we might think of HR as really transactional, like I said at the top, like payroll, benefits, all that good stuff.
Mhm.
But HR, like a lot of other functions, like they're evolving into like really doing really meaty projects. Like in my recent experiences, like they're doing big transformation projects. They're doing, they're changing processes or making things more efficient, really tying themselves. I mean, they've always been tied to the business, but even more so. Mm-hmm. So I think the idea of having it doesn't surprise me that people want more comms planning and strategy because it's not just about like sending the email about, you've got paid. Super important. Don't get me wrong. Super important to get paid in an organization. Yeah. But HR, I think as a function is doing more and more strategic work, which is actually quite exciting.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Cool. Okay. So one of my HR pals,
say pals?
I don't know. I don't really say
what do
pals.
You say? HR
colleagues, friends.
Hello,
HR friends. Contacts me to create a comms plan to launch a piece of work. Could be something big, small, medium, whatever that is. So after a bunch of questions, I usually hand back to them sort of a document. It's a fairly standard document to us communicators anyway, called communications plan. Sorry. And it covers sort of 7 areas, which we know as communicators comes.
It's the basics.
It's the basics, right? Objective, audience, key messages, channels or tactics, timetable or time frame, review and approval, our favorite, measurement. So we're going to start, what we're going to do today is we're going to walk through sort of those key areas of communications plan, starting with objective. So I'll usually ask the most obvious question, what's your objective? What does that really mean, right? And and it's really about what do you want your audience to do? Why are we doing this kind of work in the first place? So I'll ask, what's the purpose of X? What's the purpose of this work? Why are we doing this? What does success start to look like after X, if it's a technology project, is launched? It's important to get to the heart of the why of this work. Mm-hmm. I think that's the objective. In a nutshell?
In a nutshell, yeah. And it's very much, you've got to be on the side of the recipient of your audience, right? So what's your objective related to them? What do you want them to do? Because as Faye and I talk about all the time, an objective is almost never, we just need people to know this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think sometimes when you ask a general question like, what's the objective? And sometimes the answer you might get from whether it's HR, IT, but let's say it's HR because we're talking about them today, is, well, we need to tell everybody about this. Well, okay, sure, we can start there, but what do you want them to do? Yeah. Right? Do you want them to adopt a process? Do you want them to use the system? Do you want them to understand how the benefits packages change? I don't know, whatever what do you want them to do with that information? Yeah. So that's the objective.
For sure. And then we move on to the next area in the comms plan. I look at them, I'm like, they're boxes of information.
Yeah.
Objective at the top. The next thing's going to be your audience. And as communicators, we divide audience between primary and secondary. And the reason is because your primary audience, let's go back to the objective. Your primary audience is the people who you want to do the thing. Whatever your objective is, your primary audience are those people. And those are the people you need to meet or need to reach. But there's also oftentimes a secondary audience, and you need to list those too. I'll know that with this, we're going to say employees say it's just at people leaders. So my primary audience is just people leaders. But the secondary audience who we need to be aware of everything is maybe at senior executive level because they have something important that they have a role to play, even though they aren't the people that you're specifically targeting for the action. Or a secondary audience could be Who knows? Maybe it's a supplier. Maybe, we're making this change inside an organization, but there's a connection to an external supplier, and they need to be part of your thinking when you're putting together your communication plan. So they're not the doers, they're not the people who you have the objective connected to, but they're still important and they need to be considered as you're completing your plan. And so that's what your secondary audience is for.
Yeah, I think another thing to consider too, with the HR projects that I've worked on, is that sometimes your secondary audience is HR. Right.
Yeah.
So it could be like, let's say you're rolling out some sort of, enhancement to a system or something. And sure, people leaders might need to use that system. And that's a bit of a change, whatever that change is. But it's also a change for your talent acquisition team or your comp team. Or so depending on how that's all structured, I think that's an important element. Like, don't forget the people inside who are actually going through possibly a change in their process or their systems or something.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And in some cases, those people might also be a primary audience.
Absolutely.
You might be communicating with them differently. And that might be required. Again, what's your objective? But yeah, you're totally right. It's not just the people who are there at the other end. If I am engaged to write a communication plan, I'm setting a day aside to do
yes,
a communication plan. You're not doing it in 15 minutes because it's a lot of thinking. Clearly, Faye and I have not scripted this episode. So as we're doing this back and forth, we're imagining creating a plan and going, oh yeah, we have to remember the HR people. Oh yeah, we have to remember these people because even though that's not the majority of the piece that's happening, it's an important element. So we need to remember them too. And that's communication planning is a lot of that, asking those questions of yourself as you're going through and creating an actual document. It's not something that exists virtually as an actual document. It's called a communication plan. And you've got to build it using these 7 sections that we're describing today. So it takes time.
Yeah, it does. No, for sure. Yeah. All right. Next one.
That was audience. Oh,
key messages. We were just talking about this earlier. So key messages, like everyone says, we need key messages for X, Y, and Z, right? What are they? Why do we need them? How do we use them, right? And Tracy, we may differ in terms of our approach. So I'll share what mine is.
And then I'll disagree with you.
Yeah.
Tell them mine.
Okay, please. I like writing, when I think of key messages, it's, things that are, what is the heart of what you're telling that audience? So again, going back to your audiences, you might have some messages for various audiences because you're asking them to do different things. One thing around key messages, I have seen key messages that are 20 pages long. They do not have to be that. Don't do that. Because then it sits on the shelf, right? So I like to do key messages that are like plain and simple. So maybe at the top you have like your 30-second, 15-second elevator pitch. Maybe you break down some of those key bullet points and you have some proof points. So I'm making a claim about, some sort of system that's going to be implemented and the benefits of that system. Maybe it's about cyclical stuff like benefits enrollment, but maybe it's changing a little bit. Maybe you're changing providers or they're doing things in a different way. And then what I like to do is I'll throw in a couple FAQs, and how I use that key message document. I try to make it 2-3 pages, 5 max. It really depends, but 2 or 3, that's my go-to. And then because I want it to be simple. The reason why I want it to be simple is that I want to be able to give it to somebody so that they can use that information when they're crafting information or if they have to respond to a question. So it's like, what is the heart of, what are the things that they're going to be repeating, the anchor to whatever that work is? What are the things that they would be saying throughout an email? Like we're going to get into tactics later, but maybe it's an email, maybe it's a speech, maybe it's a video. So that's how I think about key messages.
Yeah, and we're not that different. But for me, they're so much shorter document. For me, key messages is 1 page because it's, to me, 4-6 things that are going to be repeated over and over again. So let's say it's a cyclical HR event.
Sure.
What's one of the key messages? Benefits enrollment closes November 20th.
Is it open? Maybe it opens on a date too, right?
Sure.
Okay.
But
I'm just kidding.
But my point is, partner. That'll sound good in the sounding.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, he'll love that. He'll love that.
but so key messages don't need to be fancy. They just need to be those things that need to be repeated over and over again as part of this thing. What are the things you want people to remember the most? And, Faye talked about, the benefits. Let's say it's a change. We're changing from system A to system B.
Sure.
And we want people to understand that we think system B is way better.
Okay.
And we're going to say the benefits of system B are ABC. And we're going to say the benefits of system B are ABC in about 20 different places, because that's a key message we really want to drive home. We want to drive home the deadline for doing it. Maybe there's a corporate statement that goes with that. I don't know, whatever they might be. Maybe a statement is, this is a simpler, easier, faster system. So I look at them again as a much shorter list of key messages, because I've seen communications plans, and the key messages are like every line of, say, there's a message from the CEO. And so they have every line in the CEO's message as a key message, but that's not, in my view, what a key message is. It's those things that if people remember nothing else, they're going to remember these 3, 4, 5 things. Okay. And I do agree, putting them into FAQs is brilliant. And we don't have an FAQ section for this, but it is, 7.8 is doing FAQs actually helps you really embed those key messages into, why are we doing FAQ? Why are we doing this? We are doing this because key messages. Yeah. When are we doing this? We are doing this on key message. Yeah. What is the impact on me? Key message. So you're right. FAQs are a good way to put key messages into practice and to really decide what the most important ones are.
Yeah, I like FAQs for that reason, to really just kind of like, I can write those key messages plainly as statements, but then I think the FAQs actually challenge me to like actually put it into language, answer those questions, because people will ask those questions, like they'll ask it on they're going to yammer on an email, they're going to call ServiceNow, like when they have that technical question. So anyway, maybe selfishly, it's an exercise for me to make sure I know what they are.
Well, and I think it can work for everybody, because so say I'm writing key messages and I can get, lofty and corporate in my writing. And then if I try to use that key message in an FAQ where I might actually be talking to a human being, I'm not going to use those words.
Exactly.
So guess what? Change the message. The key message is wrong. The sentiment is right, but you got to say it in a way that humans can actually relate to.
And dogs, maybe.
But
channels, right?
Okay, I get to start on channels.
Do you want to do channels?
I'll start on channels.
Okay.
So channels are tactics. So channels are all those ways in which you might send a message that will be received by another person. So it could be over coffee. It could be, say, an all-employee meeting. It could be a message from your CEO. It could be small group meetings. You might think that the very best way for this information to be delivered is we're going to broadcast a message to everybody in the company, maybe through the intranet, or maybe the head of the company, the CEO or president will send a message. But then, because the nature of whatever this is complex and it's rich, there's a lot of information. Anything that is got a lot of information, as rich as an information, is not appropriate to an email or an all-employee thing saying, just go read here for all the details. So maybe part of the plan is we're going to do an all-employee message through some channel or another. And then we're going to recommend that every team leader have a meeting with their team, and we're going to send that team leader all the other information.
Sure.
And then we're going to rely on those team leaders to deliver that. And then in doing that, I'm like, we're going to have to really take the team leaders, the people leaders, through all this stuff. How are we going to do that? All right, well, we're going to have a series of video conference calls. Yeah. Because we got people all across the country. So we're going to do a series of 4 video conference calls where we're going to send the package of information to the people who need it. We're going to take them through it because we need them to take their people through it. So now I've got 3 channels that I've already decided on. The all-employee message coming from whatever that channel is in the organization, the meeting between HR, say, and team leads around the company to really get into a deeper dive of understanding, and then the reliance on those team leaders to hold team meetings with their people to share that information. So that's an example of what are the channels and the tactics that you're going to use. And there are all sorts of channels. Mm-hmm. And it's about figuring out what's the right channel for what our objective is.
Yeah.
For that part of the communication plan.
I would say that, around channels, depending on your organization, you might have, I think this is also a great way to partner with, if you can, like an internal communications department or somebody in communications, simply because typically corporate communications or internal communications, they hold the keys to those channels. So channels could be a corporate newsletter, could be your intranet, of course, right? Broad distribution emails, right? So usually communications is involved in those, and they have sort of, I was going to say rules, guidelines.
You need to make us happy before we let you.
I'm trying to be kind, and that's another episode altogether. I promise. Yeah. But but I think that's a good way to partner with your communications people, because they hold the official channels. That's not to say though that you can't be creative. So again, it all depends. Again, we don't want to overcomplicate depending on whatever your project is. But there are be creative. Maybe like you said, maybe there's a video. Like if you use Yammer, like social, like internal social media networks, there's some great ways to communicate there. How do you maybe it's something that's takes over time, like a few months. Maybe you need a campaign or whatever that is, right? So think about what's the best way to, what are the channels that are best, that you could use for your objective. I worked with a communications leader, and her approach was always she always cautioned us against say and spray. Don't say and spray, which meant don't use all of them. You don't have to use all of them. Yeah. Use the ones that count. Go where people gather.
If I'm the comms person and I've got not nearly enough bandwidth to support everybody. So if you came to me and said, hey, we've got this thing we need to launch, can you help me do a communication plan? I'd probably go, I don't know. I don't really have the bandwidth for that. And sorry, I'm not supposed to do that.
Yeah. Or whatever those answers
I would always hate saying that.
Yeah,
but if that same person came to me and said, okay, I put it all down.
Yes.
This is my objective. I know these are the audiences. I know these are the key messages that I think we need to have. I think these channels, can you help me just refine what I've already got? I'd be like, I am so happy to
love
do that.
you. And we would work with you all the time.
Yeah.
We would.
Yeah,
We would,
for
right?
sure.
We love that.
For sure.